So kind of carrying on into this video, I'm talking to you of what I see as the what I think it is anyway, the sheepfold that he's talking about here in this chapter. It's not the church. It can't be heaven, because why would he lead? He says, I think it's in verse 3, he says something about how to him, the shepherd, the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls them out, or he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. He's not going to lead you out of heaven. He's not going to lead you out of the church, the true church. Not talking about a lot of what's going on out there right now. Um, um, we'll talk more about that later. But I think what he's talking about in that day, at that time, at that moment, when he said that in verse number 1, about the sheepfold, he was talking about, and verse 3 as well, he's talking about Judaism, which was the religion of the day that was created by the Pharisees a couple of hundred years prior. And they had developed this and created a method of worship that was mixed with other forms of worship from other lands. We're talking about Babylonian and such. At any rate, you can look into that. Just look into the Pharisees. I mean, you can do a couple of year or two study on that, and it'll carry you pretty deep. But at any rate, they had developed a religious form of worship for the people that was leading them away from the Scripture, away from the Father. And Jesus come to lead them out of that fold, and he had a right to do it because he entered by the door. And the door was ownership. He owned and had the right to come in and take his sheep. His sheep. That's who he was concerned about. He came for the lost sheep. His lost sheep. And he calls them out by name. So we see that the one who enters by the door is a true shepherd. And we see that, that Jesus was that shepherd. There's many prophetic scriptures in the Old Testament about him, how the things that the Son of Man would do, and coming to save us, the sheep. And but in the New Testament, we see where he refers to himself as that shepherd. And like over in Matthew 19, there's a verse over there that says he's the shepherd that seeks to save even just the one. When he was talking about leaving the 99 just to go get that one. That is a shepherd that cares about his sheep. In Matthew 9 over there, he says that it says that he was moved with compassion because he saw the crowds and they were being harassed and they were helpless. He saw the helplessness of the sheep. Remember, we talked about that with the blind man episode, where he could not save himself. He had no ability to save himself, just like the man who is dead in his trespasses. A dead man don't know he's dead in his trespasses. He don't know anything, right? And so he saw the crowd, that they were helpless and they had need of a shepherd. They were like sheep without a shepherd. I'm so thankful for that, because there was a time I was lost as a ball in high weeds. I had no idea that I was deceived. I had no idea that I was without. I had no idea that I was blind. I had no idea. Just like you. And just like others that we're supposed to go talk to about these things. Over there in Luke, there's a verse that talks about how, he calls them his own little flock. He equated himself to the shepherd. Over there in 1 Peter, I believe it's chapter 2, somewhere in that chapter, he said Peter was saying you were sheep. You were straying sheep, but have now returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. The shepherd. Hebrews 13 says that he is the great shepherd of the sheep. And then we see that there are false shepherds. And the example in this chapter is he's talking to the Pharisees, looking right at them. They don't come through the door. They come up over the wall. They use a different means, a different method. They didn't use the word. They don't use the scripture. They made up their own and wrapped it around the truth so that the truth was hidden. It's what we call wicked. It's how they would make a wick. They would take the one strand and wrap other strands of doctrine around the truth and hide it from the people. But Matthew 23, I think it's verse 2, that says that they sit on the seat of Moses. They were thieves and robbers. They took something that didn't belong to them. It wasn't theirs, and they are false. They are deceptive, and they are deadly. The false shepherds lead with deception. They take a little bit of truth, and then they wrap their idea around it, and they lead everybody astray. Now, how many generations has that been going on since Jesus was on this earth? Long time, ain't it? Am I saying I'm always right? Heck no, I ain't saying I'm always right. But I am saying that there's a lot of people that are confused out there. And I could be one of them. But I believe what the Word says. And if you take it in context and you read it one verse at a time, and you keep going, it starts to paint a picture that you... And his sheep hear his voice. The voice of a stranger they'll not follow. These false shepherds, they fleece the sheep and then eat them. What does that mean? I looked that word fleece up. It means to strip of money or property by fraud or extortion, to charge excessively for goods and services, to remove the fleece or shear the sheep of what they got, and then they eat them. Hey, give to the widows, the orphans, and the poor. That's who we need to be giving to and helping. And remember, take everything I say with a grain of salt.